Welcome to the Enchoris podcast, a podcast focused on sharing cultural management news and talks with people working in Germany to the outside of Germany. So we have the pleasure today to have our guest Valentina Obando from See the Sound and Sandra Cologne. And welcome.
Hi, Elias. Thank you so much for having me at your
Thank you for
podcast.
taking time. We are recording this talk just before the festival starts. So thank you for taking time while you have none, planning everything. But the idea is that we talk a little bit about the festival and what people can expect this year and give people a little bit of feeling of how things work behind the scenes and how something like that gets to go on stage, gets funded, works, and how new generations of people can learn about film and soundtrack music and syncing and licensing and AI and everything. So before we get into Sandra Cologne, though, would I like to ask you a question? You're a journalist, right?
Yes.
So what made you decide to go into journalism?
Oh la la. I think when I was at the school, actually, I wanted to study medicine.
Okay.
But my brother started to study journalism. And I got much into it when he was doing interviews. He was taking me everywhere. And I thought, oh my God, that's very interesting, like to exchange with people all the time, knowing different stories and finding the ways to tell these stories. So that's why I just made the changed my mind and then became journalist.
Okay, I see the bridge between storylines and storytelling and information and film. So I think that movies and documentaries are a very special way to do journalism. So we just talked before we started the podcast about Medellin, Medellin, and the fact that it has perfect weather. So that's quite a move from Colombia to Germany. And how did you end up working at Sandra Cologne and See the Sound?
It was just like a coincidence. I met Michael Aust, who is the director of the festival, at a cafe where I was working when I just arrived to Germany because I was studying and trying to learn German 5 years ago. And I met Michael and he asked me, what do you do for life? What's your background? And I told him I'm a journalist. And he said, I need someone to help me with press. But then I became the main curator of the festival and do different things there, like from the production of the festival, but also the curatorial process, the negotiation of films. So I have different activities there, but it's quite interesting for me. So I have learned about very different things and not being far away from journalism. That is the thing that I like to do.
Interesting. We all end up doing a version of what we started to do. And I think what we talked a lot in this podcast with people with that skill sets are becoming more important than job descriptions. That the unique way each of us is uniquely blessed with some talents and what we study and what we learn, it all comes together. And since business models change so much, I think in the future we're going to be more focused on what a unique individual brings to the table and not what the degree he did 20 years ago was, but what our life path is, how we develop. So for me, that sounds natural. Let's talk about See the Sound. For our viewers and listeners, See the Sound is a festival that is mainly focused on movies about music. That's why the name is also See the Sound. I've been to the festival multiple times in the past over 10 years, more. And one of the things that I find really interesting is that the music industry is focused a lot on promoting artists, creating a narrative around them, selling records, creating press. But when you see a lot of the movies that you show at the festival, you see the stories behind it, or you see a different perspective on the artist. What have you learned by watching all those movies about musicians?
At the beginning was Because I'm not expert even in films or in music, but actually I think that was the most important thing, that I was not much into one of these things, because I have more the point of view of the normal public. So when we look for films, for example, we want these films to be creative, we want to have relevant stories, of course, but also being entertaining. That's very important, because if we want to have people in the cinemas, we really need that the film catch the people. I have learned so much about the storytelling. Of course, I cannot say that I will be a filmmaker now, but I have seen so many different documentaries, and it's very interesting how people can make the same story in very different ways. We have watched films that are from anime, for example, and so the creative way to create a storytelling, it's wonderful. I have seen so many different stories, and very nice.
I think my favorite film, I don't know if it's correct what I'm saying, there was a Super Fairy Animals documentary that was a story that wasn't real. It was an abstract journey. And I remember that was in a viewing in a square a few years at See the Sound. And I remember having such a good time because the music didn't matter. It was just a beautiful story arc to get lost in the music of an artist. And that's a good example of something being highly entertaining. And it doesn't matter if you like the artist, if you're a fan, but it gives you a deeper insight on the personality behind it, or the playfulness, or the drama sometimes. So I find this very special, because usually those movies end up being viewed by the fans of a band. And it's really interesting when you have a week of a curation of movies, and you don't go as a fan of a project, even though you will select the things that you know But I find it a very interesting experience to be at the festival for music lovers. And Cologne is a city that lives around recorded music. So it's a very special place, and I always enjoy the talks after the screenings and the surprise.
Yes, no, I just wanted to add that, as you say, we have usually films about big bands, big names, but also stories about some people that no one knows it, from different countries. And sometimes they are very touching, and you discover things that are impressive. For me, as you were telling which was your favorite, I won't say this is my favorite, but one of the films that more surprised me, it was 2 years ago. We had a film in our submission list named Bring Minyo Back. And I saw that Minyo was a traditional music from Japan. And I thought, okay, interesting, I would watch the film. And it turns out that there is a band in Japan named Minyo Crusaders, and they started a project to save this traditional music, Minyo, and they mix it with Colombian cumbia. And it was completely a surprise for me. And because I'm from Colombia and I like so much cumbia, but the music they did, it was amazing. And actually in the film, they traveled to Colombia and they do wonderful music. I like it so much. I wanted to dance in the cinema when I watched it, or at my house first when I watched it the first time, but then in the cinema. And it turns out that I have a Japanese friend here in Cologne, and I invited her to the film, and she was crying in the cinema, even when the film is not especially sad or something. But she was also super touched about the music, and I found it very sweet, this connection that we are from very different places in the world, and just a film with this music, mixed music, brought us together in the cinema. It was amazing.
It's a universal language, and as cliche as what I say sounds, the moment we realize how much we have in common and how crazy things get mixed, like if someone looks back in the last centuries, how instruments went from one culture to the other, how the influences are, and then you have a crazy story like that crosses an ocean where you're like, how did that happen? That's the beauty, and I think that's the best part about music documentaries. It's not the behind the scenes aspect, but it's the unique context the music happens in. just like a conversation between two people. There's a framework, we talk here, and that's very often equally interesting to what is being said. And I think that's a beautiful discovery, and I think that's the true meaning of diversity, to understand a different culture, engage with it, go deeper, and find the things that resonate. And life is very surprising, because once you have an open heart and an open mind, there's so much beauty to find out there. And I'm saying that in times that are with war and depression, but music and art is, in my view, one of the best things humans do. And it's nice to be celebrated, especially in darker times. So I think that's what I really enjoy about the, because every year I don't really care about what is being shown, but the whole idea of the festival, I think, is very, to any person who loves music, it's very appealing. Let's talk a little bit about Soundtrack Cologne, since it starts on the 14th. This podcast will air a few days before this, and we're recording it in the beginning of July. What is happening this year at Soundtrack Cologne before we go back to see the sound?
To see the sound, yes. So just as a context, Soundtrack Cologne is a conference that takes place in Cologne since 23 years. This year will be the 33rd edition. And it's a conference that explores the connection between music and film, TV, and video games. So it wants to offer mainly to the industry, composers and sound designers, networking activities, but also panels, workshops, to learn a bit more about this connection, and also to give them the space to connect themselves with other professionals. Soundtrack Cologne is, I think, one of the biggest conference. It is one of the biggest conferences in Europe for this, and it's a wonderful space. So you cannot imagine how the professionals enjoy so much being together, because there is not many chances where you are a musician, I guess. You know how difficult can be, mainly at the beginning, to find a way into the film industry, for example, if you are a composer. But this is a beautiful reunion of professionals.
For the people who have followed the story of this conference, and we had Michael Aust as a guest in the podcast, so go to that episode where we talk a little bit about the history and the origins of the festival. But what we talked on that episode, and what I have actually seen, is how people started connecting, unionizing, sharing knowledge. So for after 20 years, it became a staple, but it has played a big part in actually musicians coming together. And one of the things Michael has said in the podcast that stuck with me is that they started thinking we're competitors, and they realized that they're on the same team. They're sharing knowledge, they're sharing experience, they unionize, they lobby for their interests. So you see the social value of communities being built. And one of the reasons we as Enchoris and the podcast support those causes is because we believe in real human interaction. Not everything can happen over a forum. We still need to come together as people and under a framework and discuss, connect, build up. And that's as important as the art, the communal aspect of it. And sorry that I say this, I just think it's a really interesting opportunity to remind people that we need conferences, we need them to be funded, and we need opportunities for people to come together. And this industry, the film industry and the music industry, are currently in a crisis. And in times of war, like I said before, and in times of humanitarian crisis, our focus lies primarily with the things that are important to humanity, but we have to keep an eye not to lose the beautiful traditions and structures we have to keep art and humans evolving. So that's our stance to it. So what is the...
And just wanted to add that also the importance to keep updated, because also the new challenges that the war are like having, or artists are facing. So this conference is an opportunity also to find a common language to face the challenges. For example, the artificial intelligence, that for some artists are super scary, some others are fluently going through. So sharing in these conversations is a good opportunity to update in these topics.
In the past couple of years, the conference has started a stream and a conference within the conference about artificial intelligence. What can people expect this year in that part of the conference?
We will have 16 panels within the AI MusicCon, and there is everything. So there are workshops about rights, licensing, how the European Union new, what's the name of this? The European Union Act for Artificial Intelligence. So some new regulations about it, how artists also can make profit of their music when it's used in artificial intelligence platforms, for example. So if you're a musician, artist, I think that's a good opportunity to learn how to make something from it.
I was really surprised at the depth of how fast this is going in the past 2 or 3 years of the conference to, again, for our viewers, selling your intellectual property or licensing it, better said, to AI companies to train. So we are talking here about the problems that have to do with AI licensing, compensation, training sets, using AI tools in music production. And the whole spectrum of those things is covered in the conference. And that's new ground for everyone, including the people who run the conference, because it's almost impossible to keep up with the pace things are going. And it's a good point for anybody in the industry to find a reference point for where are things now. And it's also very important for the business models of composers, musicians, and filmmakers. It's a new reality we all have to navigate.
Mm-hmm. And also about which kind of softwares, also from the practical way, we have some workshops, hands-on workshops, about which softwares are using some of the composers we have as guests and which tools are more useful for them, what have they discover in their exploration of this. So it's very practical.
I think that's something also that shows the value of the conference, that it gives continuous training to people in the industry. Like you have to keep yourself informed, and that's not something you can go back to university as a professional. So there's a lot of value, and composers have to stay on top of their game in a very competitive field. So staying informed on software solutions, new techniques, AI tools, non-generative AI tools, and how to work with generative AI where they have to, which I personally think we all have to approach with caution. But that's exactly what this conference is about. And even things like legislation, whether it's from the European Union or from rights associations, it's a good opportunity to get some insight and stay on top of your game. So let's go back to see the sound. We had a guest on the podcast, Jan Lankish, a few months ago, who just produced a record by someone by the Sandra Orchestra, Marshall, a very good record. And I saw that you have a Sandra documentary on the...
We have 2 Sandra documentaries this time, yes.
Okay, crazy. That surprises me. So how did you end up with 2 documentaries about a project on the list?
When we are looking for films, we have submissions and we are also exploring about films. And sometimes it just happens that there are a lot about a topic or a genre or jazz. And every year we get some surprises like this. And actually, at some point, we wanted to do like a full strand of genre because we discovered that there are older documentaries about genre, but at the end we just made with these 2. The name of these documentaries are Sandra Do the Impossible and The Magic City. The Magic City is more focused on the city Birmingham where Sandra grew up and how the city impacts his development into the music and the career. But yeah, it was just the coincidence that both films were good, were quite new, and at the end our curators wanted to show them both.
It's also that what I said, this record came out who got a lot of recognition, and it's interesting when something comes to an end, then the story needs to be retold. For anybody who hasn't seen Sandra Orchestra live, check it out. It's quite the experience. I don't know if video can do it justice, but the music and the storytelling had a very profound effect on a lot of the stuff we listen to today. Also the experience of how the concerts happen. I saw you also have a David Bowie film.
Yes, we have David Bowie, we have Boy George, we have John Lennon and Yoko Ono. That's also something that usually happens. It's kind of tradition that we have a John Lennon and Yoko Ono film. But when there is something else to tell, and we discover different storytelling and creative stories, it's worthy to show them. So these are some of the big names we will have. We also have a film about Diane Warren, Bill Evans. As I told you, we usually have some sections in the program, but this year we don't have we won't divide the program by sections. But in the past, we have had a lot of films about jazz, and this year will be just a couple. But Bill Evans, one of the biggest pianists, he has a very good film. This is actually not a documentary, it's a feature film. Even when our program is focused more on documentaries, we will have 23 documentaries this year and 5 feature films. So it's different formats.
Different forms of storytelling. It just has to do justice. I remember the streams in the festival. It's interesting, the audience is more open. I think people don't think anymore in genres. They like in the 90s, you were either listening to this type of music or to this type of music. And I think the audience has become more eclectic, that we all are more interested in the kaleidoscopic aspects of life. Of course, everybody has his preferences. But I think more and more, especially people who are younger than me, I will talk about myself, that are in their early 20s and 30s, don't look at music in genres. They're also used to sampling, and film and popular culture have embraced some of the most left field things anyway. So I think it's a good choice to just offer the whole program as is without creating an artificial segmentation within it. Interesting choice. I think for me that's reflected to how the audiences behave. We all just need an interesting, surprising thought more than we need context. I was really interested in the Boy George documentary because I won't spoil anything, but really interesting how a person's life can go from one extreme to the other. I'm saying nothing here, but I'm trying not to say anything about the film, and I haven't seen the film. I just read the context around it. And as far as John Lennon and Yoko Ono, you see the effect of pop culture. It's like going back to the big story of the last century. What have you noticed in the attendance of See the Sound in the last years? It happens in the same framework as Soundtrack Cologne, so there's overlap. People can see the movies. But people in Cologne tend to, it's a good, people from the music scene really enjoy it every year. What have you noticed over the years with so many things being available online? I personally miss being able to, for example, buy a movie or a music documentary. I remember buying a Sigur Rós DVD, and I was so happy about how beautiful that was. And now with streaming, we're caught in between streaming and it's not available, and where do I find it? And you can't see a movie anytime at the cinema. So how's the audience responding to what the festival is offering? That's a very long question, but I hope the message came across.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, first I wanted to say that we find different people that really just go there because they are fan of the band that we are screening, and sometimes we just saw them there once because they really want to watch just the film of their favorite band, for example. But we also have a lot of people that are just music fans and they like to watch any kind of stories. And that's the most amazing thing for us, of course, because they appreciate just the program that we create, right? But it's true that streaming platforms are affecting definitely the way we consume films. I will say myself, I don't go that much as to cinema as before, for sure, because if I can just be on the couch and decide what to watch. But what makes difference in the sound is usually the films that we screen at the festival are not available in platforms, and it's a unique opportunity to watch them here in Cologne. And of course, watching a film about music in a cinema is a different experience because music is a central part of the film and sound is quite relevant for sure. So definitely it's a better experience to watch in the cinema, and also because sadly documentaries are not the main business of platforms, I would say, even when some platforms have available documentaries, but many of these ones you cannot find them there. So really I will say to people that is listening to the podcast that could be the unique opportunity to watch these films.
I think that's the problem with a lot of eclectic music and films. They get lost in the algorithms or the availability on streaming services. Then you have the small cinemas that will offer it for a few days, and if you miss that window of opportunity, you can't see it. So I'm wondering if there's going to be a form of cinemas in the future that's going to have a form of curation to make it easier for the public to see movies. I'll give you an example. Imagine if you play a documentary the last Friday of a month for 6 months. Because if you put it within a week, the way people's attention spans are, they're going to miss it. So it's a miss. So I'm wondering if we're going to learn from streaming, going back to how we curate things in the cinema. Like, because the same thing happens with records, that people do a tour, a press tour, and then after a month, a record used to be promoted for 3 months. Now the window is around 2 weeks.
Super short. Yes.
So it almost gets lost in the noise. So I think a festival is a good opportunity. I consider the curation of a festival an art piece in itself because it's a unique set of a storytelling arc. And I think that one of the things, and this is a statement on my part, we should start to preserve that information about festivals, whether it's music, because there's a lot of beauty in how something is curated. Just like a museum art exhibition, there it's obvious that it's curated in a way, in a central space, in a certain way. So I really think we should start as a society also keeping those things together. Imagine if you could repeat See the Sound 22 in 40. Can you imagine that?
Yes.
20 years later, using the same program for a completely different generation, a different audience. So I think as a society, we should start learning from how AI thinks instead of using AI. And that means we have an amazing amount of curated works. How crazy would that be, that idea? Sorry for a second. I just think it's really interesting to see a festival 20 years later with it's almost like a time traveling thing.
Yes. Our festival is focused more on new films. So we usually screen all films not older than 3 years. But for sure, it's worthy actually to bring old films live again. Actually, this year, especially, we will do open air program in cooperation with Comedia Theater. So we will have some films within See the Sound, a screen in open air in Comedia, but also we will have an extended program in cooperation with Comedia, and we will have September songs, the Kurt Weill film, and it's from the 1984. It's an old film, but it's restored, and we watched it and decided like it was worthy to put it again in the program, even when it's an old film and it's not taken, for example, into the competition of our festival. But for sure, bringing stories live again, it's worthy.
I based that idea on what you said, that a lot of the movies and documentaries are not available. You would probably find it in a library somewhere. If it was ever printed on DVD or some sort of storage medium. To everybody's surprise, I think a lot of content will get lost in the digital age. And I think we have to start thinking about preservation of our cultural heritage. And digitization is a very, very big challenge for that. How many films are getting submitted every year, more or less?
So we get on average around 80 to 90 films submitted through the submission process we have in our platform and also in Film Freeway, which is a platform for festivals. But also in our research, we also get around 70 films. So this year, for example, we evaluated 45 films. And it's a lot when you see that the production of films every year, music documentaries, are this big. It's amazing, of course. But as you say, like the industry can move so fast, and these films, many of them disappear from the platforms or from the public view, like the opportunity to watch them. But it's quite big, the number of films that we get. And we have selected, as I said before, 23 documentaries,
Yes.
5 feature films, and also 7 short films, because we also get short films related to music.
Short films are a very interesting format. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes. Yes. Sadly, I have not the chance, even when I am the main curator, I don't have the chance to watch all the films. So sometimes it can be, difficult
if you
to
do the
talk.
math, if you do
Yes.
the math, that's over 150 hours of viewing time.
Yes, it's
So
a lot. I watch around 45 this year, but that's a lot.
That's a lot of movies.
Yes, but the shorts are, of course, a big and an important part of our festival also. Because for sure, doing a film, a long film, a documentary or a feature film, it's costly, it's super high, the production. But also when you are starting, of course, not just starting, but we have a lot of short films that are really, really amazing also stories.
Making a short film is a really hard form of storytelling because you have to condense it. And it's, I find it really challenging. And especially when it's about a musician or an artist, it needs to be very focused on something for it to work. So I think that's also a very unique aspect of filmmaking. I compare short films for people who still know what vinyl is. There were 7-inch record and 12-inch records, and usually the 7-inch was the single. And I compared it to that, and 7 inches had to have a very clear intent so that the story comes through. In a long format, you can get lost for a few minutes, but it's a longer story arc. The focus of Soundtrack Cologne and See the Sound is where film and music meet. And the conference has been very, very supportive to composers and filmmakers. What have you learned about how the industry has changed in the last 5 years, especially after AI arrived? What are the main thoughts and the main challenges of musicians and filmmakers? In my view, they are uncertain about the future that is even more competitive and the monetization and the rights, but I'm talking more about what do you see from the people? You see so many films being made. What do you sense about the need of people to tell stories? I wasn't trying to get to the industry problems, more about the intent of the creators. What drives people to make the question simple, to make music documentaries, in your view?
Wow. It's a difficult question. But I will say that definitely even when people has now artificial intelligence, the creativity behind the music, it's what what we need to preserve, right? And also the formats of the film. As I tell you, we can have many films with just talking heads, people being interviewed, but the most successful films, or the ones that we really want to show and people want to watch, are the different formats. So I guess also these it's also happening in the music. So even when you are using different softwares, different programs to do the music, or being helped by artificial intelligence, the music, when it keeps the human side and the creativity side, is the one that people really wants to listen. But for sure, we have found very funny stories. We will have in Soundtrack Cologne a panel about a film. I don't remember in this moment the name of the film, but it's a film that was mainly scored with artificial intelligence. And it was the director of the film, a woman that doesn't know much about music, who did it because she didn't have enough funding and enough money for this. And at the end, she found company, the name is Musiversal, and they help her to organize the music that she created with artificial intelligence, and apparently it worked. So we will show this as an example of also how people is using it. Of course, it can be very, I don't know, if sad or worrying when you see that anyone can do music now and doesn't need to have a knowledge in music. Of course, composers should be worried about it, but at some point it's also an opportunity that anyone can do a film now and have the music in the film without having a lot of money or worrying about how I will do the music for this film.
We talked a lot in this podcast about how the challenges from live music to recorded music to sampling to drum machines to so it's just another technology. I don't think we can substitute human creativity, intent, and emotion, but there are people who are going to use AI as an instrument, and it's going to become part of we're going to have some crazy musician doing unbelievably interesting things with it, misusing his own content. So human creativity will even tame that horse, in my view. But it's super interesting that the conference gives an opportunity to show every side of the argument. It's a very controversial issue. People are in love with storytelling the industry does to get AI financed. So the reality of it is that it is very limited in scope, but there are people who are going to do creative things. So I'm going to look into that panel because it's another technology. The important thing is to respect the people and the works it's based on, because that's the biggest challenge. And that would be very interesting for me to see if a creator like that, who starts with pure intent, can go back to the roots of what is being used for him to generate what he does. So I understand the controversy, but I think it's going to be a reality. And even humans are really good at copying each other in pretty nasty ways. So AI is just another tool that mirrors the dark side of human behavior in many ways. And we are going to have to learn to live with it. I'm surprised to what a degree it took over a lot of the time in this podcast series. Not because it's a cool subject, but because it's really a challenge at the moment for software, music, film, and people's jobs in very different ways. As a journalist yourself, in my view, is that someone who can write a good text has a huge advantage over AI. And we just had a guest, Robert Douglas, who has a company called Spec Kitty that is an AI context, spec-driven development tool. And we were talking about the fact that AI can only replicate and add, but it cannot do that without context. And humans are really good at creating context when there's none. So it's a big challenge. Back to the festival. You also have an award at this festival. Would you like to tell us more about that?
Yes, of course. Every year we select short list within the full program. This year, we will have 8 films, 8 documentaries, and we give the best documentary, best music documentary award. The prize will be given on the 17th of July, on Friday, within the award ceremony of Sontra Cologne. And we have really different stories there. And this election, so I can assure this is picked hand these films, because of course our curatorial team reunites and say which are the best documentaries. And as I tell you before, we evaluate from the cinematographical way also the relevance of the stories that are really touching stories, for example, but also entertaining stories. So I can assure that people will really enjoy our program of the competition program. The screenings will be at the Odeon Cinema in the Südstadt, and every day from the 15th to the 19th of July at 7 and at night. And luckily, we will have a couple of directors of films attending, and also we will have this year, especially on the 17th of July, Pauline Black. I don't know if you know who is Pauline Black.
No.
She's the leading voice of a band, a ska band, British band, The Selector. And I will really especially recommend the people to watch this film. The story behind Pauline Black is not her last name, but she chose it. She's a Black woman, and she has a long career fighting against racism. A long career in music, but also a long career fighting against racism. And it was a surprise, the film, for me, because I didn't know that I liked ska when I was a teenager in Colombia. And I never asked myself why it was a relationship within, for example, neo-Nazi aesthetics and the ska music. I've never asked myself this, even when I saw it. And when I watched the film, they have a lot of explanations about this. And also, it's really strange to see how a black band, mainly Black band, has a lot of fans within the neo-Nazis and within skinheads, for example, and how this is hard for them to deal with this, like with the musicians. And Pauline Black was one of the founders of a movement in England named Two Tone, and the film is Pauline Black, the Two Tone Movement. We will have also, actually, this is different. We usually don't have this within the Citizen Festival, but we will have this year a book presentation with also a British writer, and it's about this topic, how the rock, but also other genres, music genres, has flirted more or less with the aesthetics of the Third Reich, for example, and with Nazism.
Yeah, it's Nazi punk and Nazi aesthetics are a pretty fucked up thing. That is my statement.
Yes.
But you see how, to make it even concreter, you see how music is a language that can be misused from the darkest side of humanity.
For sure.
And then you get a paradox like what you said, that they like an artist and they cannot stand their skin color, which just shows you how sick that is.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for pointing that out. I think when it comes to artists who take a stance, especially when they're caught up in such a dynamic, that is super important to highlight it, because they don't have a choice. It's they are put in a very, 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 very hard position. So I can imagine the depth and the awareness of a person like that. Mm-hmm. It's I really look forward to that. So when we were preparing for this podcast, I usually ask the guests a couple of questions so I have an idea of what's happening before I do my own research. We talked about female directors, and I think you told me that the submissions are like 10 or 20%, right? So what can you tell about female directors and female producers? What is your experience as a curator of a festival?
I have seen that it has increased, definitely, and we are happy also to have this. every year when we have the festival, some people is criticizing that not the 50% of the films are curator or are from film directors. But of course, this is proportional to the submissions we get. This year, we will have 7 films about women, and with the protagonists are women. And we have amazing stories. For example, the Diane Warren story. Have you?
No, I'm not
Do you
aware.
know? Okay, Diane Warren is a songwriter. She has got 15 nominations for the Oscar, and she has not won.
One.
Sorry, so far. But she got a honorary Oscar, actually, because she's an amazing songwriter. And everyone will notice that no music written by Diane Warren if you watch the film. Also, we'll have, so not just stories directed by women, but also women as protagonists, I'll say. I wanted also to highlight the Kate Bush film. Kate Bush became super famous 2 years ago because of the Stranger Things
Really?
TV series. Yeah, because of Netflix. She is the singer of Running Up the Hill. One
They
of
put
the
that
songs.
in the series.
Yeah, it's in the
Okay.
series Stranger Things. And after 35 years, it became the most listened song in Spotify and many platforms. And it was like, okay, who is this woman? Who is Kate Bush? And I never heard before about her. I listened the song and I like it so much. And I discovered watching the documentary that when you watch documentaries about artists, sometimes there are a lot of repeated stories of fame, then the fall, drugs, problems. Because, yeah, the fame, when they get famous super young, it can be a bit tough, right? But the Kate Bush story is, she was at the 17, when she was 17 years, she became famous, and she made a lot of work of it. So she created a production studio when she was super young. So it's a really different story. And I don't know, I cannot generalize, but I see that watching these women stories, you can see more different lives than with the typical rock star that can be.
Yeah, that's a lot about fame, addiction, mental health issues. And then there's the other aspect of the industry. There's Kate Bush, there's Annie DiFranco, there's people who took their chances or build up their own unique paths. And I think we have to highlight that more than the tragedies and the drama. Placebo covered Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush a few years ago, and I thought that was going to be the second life of the song. But you see what sync does to artists, that it brings back music and brings it to new audiences. So a popular series can actually change the worth of a catalog of an artist, bring an artist back to the mainstream in a very, very surprising way. That's the power of the internet and streaming. So another really interesting film to watch. I want to say that it's impossible from a curation perspective, I suppose, to answer all those accusations about equal participation in women, but a festival cannot fix injustices of many decades, and more men had the opportunity to go into music in the last 50 years, and I think it's important to create the circumstances for more women to have equal opportunities and not simply look at the stats of how many films are there, because we want to go to a festival because every movie has been selected because it's a good movie, and not just to balance out an injustice that has to do with gender, with race, with all the things that don't work in our society. So I think that's a fair way to see it from the outside as someone who doesn't do your job. And I think that's a good way for people to start thinking, because not everything can simply be activism. We all have to be aware, but our society has a trajectory that cannot be fixed over 5 years, but over generations. And I know some people see that as an excuse, but That's a personal opinion.
Yes, for sure. And within Soundtrack Cologne, we have other competitions, actually, the Per Raven Music Award and also the European Talent Competition. And we have seen that we don't receive as much as submissions from women, but this is increasing in time. So we have seen the change in the last year for sure. We're so happy to have more women, young women composers, and many sound designers also. Many women work in sound design. And this is changing. It's slowly changing, but we have seen this improvement. And of course, because we are aware also about the statistics, how women are working in the film industry. For now, it's only 30% of composers in Europe are film composers that have projects live are women. So the proportion is still very, very small, but women are studying more composition also. We have seen that more or less is 50% now that women are studying film music.
I hope that in the future we won't even have that talk. But Soundtrack Cologne has supported a lot of female composer initiatives. It was a ground in the last years where female composers could meet, the initiative started. So it always was an environment that was extremely supportive for that. And I say that as someone who has attended the conference now for over 15 years. And I've noticed the change. And I think if nothing really bad happens, we're going to have a healthier situation in this industry in the next years. But like I said, injustices of the past and social problems cannot be solved within an industry. They are broader. Just like the world in each country has completely different circumstances and injustices, as we both have moved from one country to the other over the years before landing in Germany. What is it like working at a festival every year and seeing different movies and seeing the industry change? What are you noticing about where filmmaking is going? That's a very abstract question, just trying. What would be surprising about what you see with filmmakers?
I am always amazed how people is still doing music documentaries, because of course the competition is harder, like because of the funds. We have talked about how difficult it is to fund a film, and even people is insisting on it, and it's because it's worthy. Telling stories, storytelling in films it's always worthy. So we have. I'm surprised every year to see how many films they are about musicians, and from every corner in the world, and they are worthy. Sometimes it's difficult for us to make decisions to leave films out, even when the stories are great, but we need to ask ourselves, okay, who will be interested to watch this film about a musician in this small place in, I don't know, Colombia, for example. I come from Colombia. But that's difficult, but that's good that we need to face to leave out films, but not because they are bad films, but because we have a lot. So filmmakers are keeping insisting and doing music films.
Storytelling is one of the main ways we preserve humanity, and we learn and we keep traditions going. So I don't think storytelling is going anywhere, whether it's music or film. What becomes harder and harder is to actually make a living or have a predictable future in an industry that is changing so much. And in the past 20 years, we got to the point where you can listen to every song that's being recorded online. A film from a small place can make it to the other side of the world. So the world has improved in many ways, which has made it also more competitive and oversaturated with content. So have you noticed in your own perception as a curator that you're oversaturated with information and content? Because you watched 45 movies how is that people are doom scrolling and they're exhausted, but when your work is also actually around evaluating content, that must be really exhausting.
Yes, definitely. It's exhausting. And also the dilemma of having mainstream also. This is also a conversation that we have always within the curatorial team, because we can have many films about, I don't know, K-pop, for example. So that's a mainstream or not a mainstream, or it's worthy to show them because the young generations are listening to K-pop. Also, yeah, we have. The good thing is that we are a team of 6 curators, and we can have these conversations within and make our arguments about what to show or not. But it's of course difficult, and I definitely think that public and the audience is a bit overwhelmed with the offer of having a lot of things. And also festivals. So if you see Cologne, that's luckily Cologne is a very active city in culture, but there are a lot of offers also about film festivals, different film festivals, and can be a bit overwhelmed. But music is special, and there are not other music festivals in Cologne, so that's our point.
It's a really challenging time for us humans, because it's called option paralysis. It's the effect you have when you go to a library and you want to choose a book. If you don't know what you want, you can get blocked. So it's I think we're going to start to navigate it, but it's new because we are one of the first generations that has access to that amount of content. And in a way, it's a blessing, but it's also overwhelming by default.
Yes, for sure. For example, thinking about how to reach these audiences and tell them about the festival. I met people in Cologne that, of course, not everyone needs to know what it's See the Sound, for sure. But I'm surprised that sometimes people say, I have no idea, I have never heard about See the Sound. And I think, why if we really do an effort to do publicity, to reach everyone, and to show that the festival exists for many years, more than 15 so far. But yeah, when there are a lot of information about like a big cultural offer is not.
It's also the nature of the algorithms on social media. You get so much content, and the algorithm learns what you want, and then it shows you more of what you want or more of what provokes you. So it becomes almost impossible to have a discovery mentality for people, because you have the feeling you already know what's happening because of your phone. And sometimes a lot of bands actually go on tour, people don't show up, and then they get a lot of attention, and people like, they toured before I knew about it. So it's very hard for everyone who tries to promote an event of any type to get any form of attention and time. If you advertise too soon, it gets forgotten. If it's too close to the event, people's attention is too short. I have no solution. That's a challenge for our times. That is really, really, really hard to navigate.
Yeah, for us, for example, also we have seen that having the festival in summer also plays a bit against us because, from statistics, summer is the worst time of the year to cinema, but also we are attached to Soundtrack Cologne, which works better in summer. So that's also that we need to play with it. That's why we have this open air program. Also a good combination. No? It's like enjoy the weather, but go watch a film.
In the south, in Italy, Greece, Spain, people go to open air cinemas more than they do in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And in Germany, if there's a sunny day, and you go to a concert or a cinema, the probability that it's empty is huge once the sun comes out. So the weather plays a really big part of attendance, and it's really risky. We did a research for the concert attendance, and one of the things is that people don't buy their tickets ahead, and they decide within the last 48 hours whether they're going to go to an event, which makes it almost impossible for organizers. Yeah. So you have the big events where you usually have the sold out mentality. Mm-hmm. And then anything that doesn't have that level of attention is completely a last minute choice. And with so much being offered, people have the feeling that I'm not missing out. So I miss out at the big reunion of this huge band. So I have to buy a ticket for that Radiohead concert at any cost. But I can see the punk band that tours the world once in their lifetime next month. So it makes no sense. But it becomes a form of consumerism that since it's available, it's there for me. And then it's not given that art needs support or funding, because it becomes a commodity due to the nature of how everybody, including me, navigates his time and his options.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to point out, like coming back to this overwhelming situation with social media and things like this, I would say that the good thing we need to be more open-minded about different things, because we know the algorithm is making us to think in some ways, and is showing us just some things. But that's a good point of attending a film festival. I won't say that this happens only with See the Sound, but with other film festivals, because you can be really surprised and find different things that you never will choose or will find out in looking into your algorithm. Just going to the festival, deciding to attend a festival, a music festival also happens that you discover very good bands, even when you were not going just because of that band or you know their music. That's a good thing of festivals, that you can really discover interesting things and different things.
I think surprise is what you said is exactly the point. We need to be more open for new experiences and not just approach everything with a consumer approach where I'm going to buy what I want. Curation, for me, is a form of art in itself. And it's also has a huge educational value that should be funded and should be supported by the states. Really interesting to see your perspective after talking about how you select films, how the festival operates within a festival. So, could you tell us when Soundtrack Cologne is taking place and when See the Sound is taking place, and give us a few information on the event?
Sure. Soundtrack Cologne will happen from the 14th to the 17th of July. This is more focused on the industry, but if you are a musician, composer, and you have any kind of interest on artificial intelligence, for example, applied to music or different things related to the music industry and the connection with the film, TV, or video games industry, you can attend the festival, the Congress. The tickets are in the Soundtrack Cologne page. And at the same time, but starting on the 15th to the 19th of July, we will have the See the Sound Film Festival, which is open to everyone, so to the public in Cologne especially. And you can watch very different films that don't make it usually to the cinemas in Cologne, and also not to platforms online.
Thank you very much for taking the time to come talk to us while planning the festival. And thank you for your insight in the curation and how a festival works behind the scenes. What I keep from this is that creators need to tell stories about music. Music documentaries are being produced at a rate that is very high. And this is an opportunity to rediscover the beauty of cinema and to listen to a movie in a space with special sound. So for anyone out there, check out the Soundtrack Cologne webpage and check out the schedule for See the Sound. For anybody outside Cologne, take a look at the schedule and plan your trip for next year, because this is too short term. Thank you again, Valentina, and we'll see each other at the festival. Thanks for your recommendations.
Thank you, Elias, for having me, and also I hope to see many people this year there.
Thank you.